There you go. If you're interested in user experience, you take contact with Anna Laurin. She'd be happy to hear from you. And now, the automotive brand Lynk & Co, they're actually asking the question if the world needs another car brand. Well, we will get to listen a bit more to their innovative approach and also the road from ownership to usership. And I'd like to welcome here in the studio David Green from Lynk & Co.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Hello, nice to be here.
Lovely to have you here at Lindholmen Open Day. Was a short walk for you in the rain?
In the rain.
Great to have you here. And we are so much looking forward to listening to you and how you describe your way about making mobility easy.
Great. Thanks very much for having me. So, yes, as I think I was introduced, Lynk & Co, another car brand, or so we're often described. First of all, a little bit about me. I work here on Lindholmen Science Park in Lynk & Co.'s global headquarters, or European headquarters. I'm the head geek and master of silly ideas. So hopefully I can explain some of those to you today. When we started Lynk & Co, there was a car. And so the first question we had to ask ourselves was, does the world really need another car brand? Because frankly speaking, when we checked with the customers, the general response we got was a little bit of a blank look, and at best the answer, not so sure. So quite a thing to set out on if you've done your user polls and found out that you weren't needed. But not to be deterred, we set out on a very different path. And actually the truth is we don't normally describe ourselves as a car brand, but I'll hopefully come back to that. First of all, then, a little bit about the car. Now, roughly 100 years ago, a big innovator, Mr. Henry Ford, revolutionized the car industry. Back then, if you wanted to order a car, you would speak to a small workshop, almost a shed, and have one almost built for you. Henry, of course, came in and did mass production for vehicles, and that absolutely revolutionized mobility. I mean, particularly in the United States, where he was based, of course, it opened up commerce and business. It enabled people to leave the town or the city that they were in and move themselves and their goods and services around the country. It meant that rural areas could open up to urban areas. And if you go to the US, you'll see, as I've often reminded when I guide people around roads in my hometown, in the US, it was built for cars, the grid system. It really was freedom of mobility. And we imagine that about the car today. If you see a car advert on the television or on social media, it's all about freedom. And normally you see a great drone shot of a car driving down an open, maybe coastal path or through the mountains, and in the freedom that it gives you. But is that the reality? Well, for most of us, and as you can see from this side, for 80% of actually European GDP, it's a very different experience indeed. It's much more about congestion and difficulty. I'm just back from having some conversations in a couple of cities around Europe about this problem, and I'll quote one person who said, yeah, every time you see an open space in my city, you think to yourself, why on earth have they not built a car park here to get all the cars off the road? In Europe, then, 80% of GDP is in a city, and depending on the city, and I picked my hometown of London, congestion costs the city in the region of £5 billion a year. That's London. Different numbers in different cities. London has a particular congestion problem, and of course I know the numbers better. And how do they add that up? Well, it's multiple factors. It's getting goods and services in and out of the city. It's getting waste in and out of the city. But it's also about how good the city is at attracting new investment and new businesses and new companies. So if you're going to site your company in a city like London, you want to know that your employees can get to you, and whether you have to pay them additional wages so that they can afford to live further away, and how late they're going to be in. In cities, and talking to some of the mayors and transport authorities in cities around Europe, if you get them in a quiet corner, they'll be quite open and say CO2 to them is sort of a long-term problem. Day to day, they're dealing with airborne pollution. And in a city like Paris, statistically, you've got a 6-month shorter lifespan if you live in the city centre. And of course, in terms of actually getting around, and again, a European number, the average speed in a city is 30 kilometers an hour. And in London, it's much lower than that. On some days, it's 7 kilometers an hour is the average speed. So really, this isn't about freedom of mobility anymore. In urban spaces, the car is as a hindrance, an encumbrance, an obstacle. So if I was to walk around Lindholmen Science Park and speak to some of the companies around here and ask them what they saw as the future of mobility, I think I would probably get a reasonable consensus that the future of mobility will be autonomous. You'll not own a vehicle, you'll hail a vehicle. There'll be ecosystems. You'll subscribe to the mobility provider of your choice and your wallet. And that ecosystem will attract you not by the hardware, not by the vehicle, not by the brand on the front of the bonnet anymore, but by the service that they offer their customers. You will probably subscribe to that service rather than own any part of it, and certainly not a vehicle. And you will be loyal to mobility brands, as I said, not vehicle brands. That prediction comes up constantly in conferences like this and in conversations that we have here in Lindholmen a lot. The question that I didn't answer and haven't got to, though, which always comes up at the end of those discussions, is when. And I deliberately picked a picture there from the BBC that I saw the other day saying why you've probably already bought your last car. Well, if they're right then, and maybe the average car swaps within 5 years, we're maybe 5 years away. So what do we need to do to get there then? Well, most people will tell you it's about legislation or insurance or trying to solve the trolley car dilemma of whether you run over old people or children at the bus stop. But again, a conversation here, and I have to be careful just in case the person's actually watching to name check, said to me the other day, the problem isn't about legislation or insurance or whether you kill old people or children. It's a paradox. It's a human paradox that you need to overcome. So, okay, explain. Well, let's say we teach a robot all of the rules of the road and tell it how to obey the traffic regulations and how to drive around a city, what it can and can't do, and how to operate. And we set that robot out onto the road. The experience inside that car is going to be truly awful. It will be like your grandmother is driving on one of her most myopic days. It'll be slow, it'll be hesitant, it won't pull out of junctions, it'll get stuck as other traffic takes over. He said the problem is trying to mix the hardware, and I love this phrase, trying to mix the hardware with the wetware. Wetware being people like you and me. So he said the simple solution to freeing up cities and creating an autonomous future is just get rid of the wetware, let the hardware take over. Because if the hardware and the wetware are competing, you either have to let the hardware off the rules and make it less and less safe, which will mean that they have, well, maybe less, but still the same sort of number of accidents. But if you get the wetware off the road, they can all collaborate with each other. It can be an ecosystem of transport. They can load balance with other mobility means. They can predict where the most congested traffic will be and take a different route. And all of that ecosystem will free up a city and remove the need to have all of these parking lots. And those empty spaces can become parks or they can become offices. So I said, that's fantastic. So what do we need to do to achieve that? He said, well, fundamentally change human behavior, because you'll never actually get people out of their cars. So the transition date will be a long way in the future. So it's about the wetware then. Let's have a quick jump out and look at some of the trends with wetware, with people at the moment. First of all, I would say, and we really see this a lot, that there is a big move towards experience over ownership. There's an argument that says it's social media that has allowed people to share pictures more of what they do than what they own, and therefore what you are doing is more important than what you're owning. But I think there is a big move that way, certainly with vacations on the rise, even during the pandemic, and purchases of large technology items on the decline. Sustainability. I think there's undeniable understanding now that we need to look after the home that we live in. And from the buying public's perspective, sustainability is now one of the key choices. So we come back to this question that we asked people: do you need another car brand? In fact, we said, what would you need from another car brand? And frankly, got blank looks. If you twist the question slightly and say, okay, what is it about your current ownership that you don't like? Then you can open the floodgates. Then you really do get lots of answers. And I think, generally speaking, to sum it up, what you might say is that the experience of car ownership is not following the experience of other things in our lives. You don't get that trust and joy and pleasure from car ownership that you can do with other things. And you always have to plan for your service. You never know how much it's going to cost you. You never feel that when you walk into a car dealership that you're getting a good deal. And this is not, blanket. There are, of course, good car dealerships. But in America, a survey the other day said 30% of people would prefer to go to the dentist than they would go to visit a car dealer. So the experience needs to change there. Okay, and we took that first step, and at the core of the Lynk & Co business model is not selling cars, but it's creating a mobility membership where you pay, in our case, 500 euros per month, and we provide you with a car that is yours to look after and use whenever you want to. And in that subscription, you get, apart from fuel, everything covered. So you get the maintenance, you get the insurance, you get a data plan, you get road tax and everything included. So it's complete peace of mind. But the other thing that we did, and again, based on feedback and some suggestions that we received, and basically a number, that your individual car that you're now paying 500 euros a month for will actually sit unused for between 95 and 96% of the time on average. My car's in a car park. Your car is presumably outside your house or in a car park. We don't use the car. So that 500 euros per month is really paying more for, mobility on demand than it is paying for the mobility that you use. So we took one additional step then, one other big core component of our business model. We gave our members a way to actually reduce the cost of their mobility by introducing a sharing function into the entire fleet. You don't have to use, but if you want to, you can press a button on the dashboard or in the app and share your car out. Now, this is quite a controversial topic. A lot of people ask, would anybody really share their car with someone else? It's an item that expresses you. It's an important piece of very expensive machinery that you own and need to look after. Well, we're seeing that it's starting to change that way. And one of the ways to actually create that change is to make it as easy as possible. So if you see from the picture on the screen behind me, you can see we have a share button in the car. Almost no one uses it. I'll run through the process by showing a little bit of how the app works. So the first thing that happens then is that the owner can choose a time when they're not using the car and make it available. Excellent. So what happened there was that the owner made their car available using their Lynk & Co app. Normally, only they can see the location of the car in their app, but when they make it available, then they make it public in a general location to all of the Lynk & Co members that have gone through a sign-up and authorization process. A member who sees the car and needs a car just clicks on the car on the map and sends a request to the owner. Here's where the tricks happen, because what we use is the standard security system, the unlock and locking system within the car. And if the owner actually agrees to make the car available, we download a lock to the car and a key to the user's phone. And during the time of the booking, then that lock and key will open the car from the phone. By making it as simple as possible, we create a little bit more fluidity and sign up, and we're certainly seeing now that some people are creating Instagram accounts and Facebook marketplaces to make their car available to other people. And we see many uses of this, possibly more in business scenarios than private, as people adopt it. Okay, so where is this in relation to this idea of the autonomous future? Well, it's one step in the right direction, we believe, of changing human behavior. If you go back to the slide I showed earlier on, and I don't mean that to the team here, if you think back to the slide that I showed earlier on, it was future mobility was about autonomous, sure, but it was also about subscription, having a subscription to mobility, and about not having your own car. And by introducing the subscription and by breaking that relationship between this car is yours and only yours, we've taken, we believe, in one step towards that future. Now, of course, when you share your car, you share it from the position that it's in. How far away will it be before we can add technology to that car that it can actually go out into the world and rent itself out and meet the user where they want it to be? Well, I'm not sure that we're very far away from the technology. Again, it's the human behavior that we're really going to have to change. So if you ask me how long it's going to be, well, 13 years. This is a very famous picture, but I do like it. It's Easter morning in New York, 13-year gap between the two of them, and spot the car in the first picture, spot the horse in the second. I think we can see the pace of change is getting faster and faster. 13 years ago today, none of us here had a smartphone. So we will see. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. What a great presentation. Very interesting. And I was thinking about what you talked about, walking around at Lindholmen Science Park, discussing future mobility with other people and so on. But in terms of accelerating innovation for you and for Lynk & Co, what does actually the ecosystem of Lindholmen Science Park mean for you in terms of how it contributes to your process and so on?
The easiest answer to that would be to say the people that are here and hereabouts, and the companies, obviously, and what they're doing. I said at the beginning, master of silly ideas. The point behind that is, if the idea is not silly, it's probably not new. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
And then if you're going to have a silly idea, either it's silly because it is new and it's revolutionary and no one's ever seen it before, so it sounds silly, or it's silly. Without a group of people in the same sort of space, other innovators, people who can test your ideas, the conversations that can go on just here in maybe the restaurant or meetings that we have, I think that's the most important thing. And I think that this really is a hub of innovation here.
Thank you. And we hope to maybe see you here next year again, if not before, of course, but during the open day next year. And we're looking forward to maybe more of a physical event, displays and so on. So
Excellent.
looking forward
Good.
to that. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks a lot.